Welcome to National Discourse.
Current affairs.
We must not extricate anybody from corruption. If any one of them is found wanting, the due course and the law must take its course.
Nation building.
Administration is slightly different from the last one in the fight against corruption.
We need to really task our leaders, who are the religious leaders, from the emir, from the bishops, from whoever they can.
Some of our village markets, there are people, they call them in Hausa yang nakama. They are like agberu in the markets. Whatever anything is not useful to you is not important to you.
Politics.
What happened in Benue might be political. It still has an undertone, not political, dated way back. If you follow history.
It's interactive.
Not part of Nigeria.
Okay.
And it will not be good for us.
When they gather their people, they tell them, these Hausa people are your enemies. When the Hausas gather together, they tell them, these Igbo people are your enemies. When the Yoruba people gather together, they say the same thing.
Who are we? We are just from the background. And today we are here in TSTV. And that is why we must propagate our own.
National Discourse, weekdays on NCTV.
Yesterday. Welcome to National Discourse, and I have someone in the studio with me, but we'll hold on to that. I'll introduce him when we go on a break, and we're back. Now, we are still in the mood of celebrating our Democracy Day that took place on Tuesday. I mean, we've been having follow-ups on topics related to that. Now, yesterday, we are still having that today, but yesterday we had another turn at during plenary. We saw Senator Dino Melaye, trying to say some things, trying to give us some words, trying to do certain things. I don't want to really say what it is because there's no outright words to that, but we're looking at his actions during plenary yesterday, and then still in line with our democracy, what is left for this government to do. Looking at next year's coming up election, that all is what we're going to look at today. And of course, I still remain Uche Uduma. We'll go for a short break, and when we come back, we'll go straight into introducing how we had today. And of course, our numbers will be rolling on the screen. You can call us. Your contribution or your question will be accepted. Please stay with us. Welcome to National Discourse.
Current affairs.
We must not extricate anybody from corruption. If any one of them is found wanting, the due course and the law must take its course.
Nation building.
Administration is slightly different from the last one in the fight against corruption.
We need to really task our leaders, who are the religious leaders, from the emir, from the bishops, from whoever they can.
Some of our village markets, there are people, they call them in Hausa yang nakama. They are like agberu in the markets. Whatever anything is not useful to you is not important to you.
Politics.
What happened in Benue might be political. It still has an undertone, not political, dated way back. If you follow history.
It's interactive.
Not part of Nigeria.
Okay.
And it will not be good for us.
When they gather their people, they tell them, these Hausa people are your enemies. When the Hausas gather together, they tell them, these Igbo people are your enemies. When the Yoruba people gather together, they say the same thing.
Who are we? We are just from the background. And today we are here in TSTV. And that is why we must propagate our own.
National Discourse, weekdays on NCTV.
We see beyond the news. We are concerned about how it affects you, bringing updates on the economy, government and politics, sports and so much more. We are committed to informing, educating and entertaining you. We are NCTV, Nigeria Central Television. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and YouTube. NCTV, strictly Nigeria.
Welcome to National Discourse.
Current affairs.
We must not extricate anybody from corruption. If any one of them is found wanting, The due course and the law must take its course.
Nation building.
Administration is slightly different from the last one in the fight against corruption.
We need to really task our leaders, who are the religious leaders, from the emir, from the bishops, from whoever they can.
Some of our village markets, there are people, they call them in Hausa yang nakama. They are like agberu in the markets. Whatever anything is not useful to you is not important to you.
Politics.
What happened in Benue might be political. It still has an undertone, not political, dated way back. If you follow history,
It's interactive.
Not part of Nigeria.
Okay.
And it will not be good for us.
When they gather their people, they tell them, these Hausa people are your enemies. When the Hausas gather together, they tell them, these Igbo people are your enemies. When the Yoruba people gather together, they say the same thing.
Who are we? We are just from the background, and today we are here in TSTV, and that is why we must propagate our own.
National Discourse, weekdays on NCTV.
You welcome back from that short break. I have with me Mr. Kennedy Ambo. You're welcome, sir. And of course, our regular analyst. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for always having me, Barrister.
Yes, thank you very much. And today we are looking at matters arising, like we said, from what we have coming from Democracy Day and Tuesday, and of course, the update on Senator Dino Melaye's actions in the plenary. I don't want to say defection because I'm not sure we have that fully stated out. Now, coming from the democratic part of the day, looking at this government and the way it's supposed to be, are there things you feel that we are not getting right, in this government?
Without stating the obvious, yes, I think there are a number of things we haven't done right as a people, as a country. This government, and I'm talking about successive governments since 1999, and this government also is falling under the same trap, or in the same trap, which is basically the foundation. We have been laying foundations for the past 19 years and we have not gotten off the ground. And it's simply because we have failed to strengthen institutions. And I think it's at the bedrock of any developed society, you must have your institutions strengthened. If your institutions are not strengthened, then you're bound to make mistakes and you're bound to fail. And so most of the failure we experience in our sectors, in the different sectors of this economy, is because the institutions have failed themselves. Having said that, I know that efforts are also underway by this government to make sure that a number of things are done right. But my worry is that everything that is being done might not have a lasting legacy. What do I mean by that? When an institution is, or when a government is being run on the basis of the strength of the component or people or the actors at the expense of a strong viral institution, then you're going to have a collapse after they leave office. Reason being that it's a strong institution that strengthens the democracy and the economy. But when you have strong men strengthening the economy and the institutions, then the day the strong men leave the system, then it's going to collapse. And so what we need to do basically is to strengthen institutions. I have been thinking about the hydra-headed issue of corruption in Nigeria. And I know for sure that the reason why we are not making headway is simply because our institutions are not strong enough. Let's take for example the judiciary. Because most times we are fixated on the executive. Yes, it is incumbent upon them to carry out the day-to-day running of government, but then there are other components of governance, which includes the legislature and the judiciary. Now, if you look at the legislatures, theirs is to just propound the law, come up with the law. It is the executive that executes, and then the judiciary carries out the interpretation of it. Now, in the fight against corruption, what we have found is that the judiciary has not lived up to its billing. And that's why we have not had the kind of convictions we're supposed to have.
Now, when you say that judiciary have not lived up to its billings, what do you mean by that?
All right.
What
now,
are the indications?
Let me explain what I mean by that. Because our jurisprudence is not as strong as and watertight as it is in the UK and the US, we do not secure high-profile convictions of corrupt people. Now, people who you call politically exposed people, PEP, the rate of convictions we have seen is very abysmal. But we just received one news the day before yesterday that the former governor of Taraba State was convicted for 14 years.
I was coming to that now. What does that leave us with in this government's fight against corruption?
Now, what that means is that, remember, this case had dragged long, for 11 years. 11 years.
Okay.
That's how long it took to establish the facts
that someone
that was culpable evidence that corruption cases were established against the former governor, and he's been convicted. He has been convicted by a justice of the Federal High Court, Gudu. Now, that is a welcome development, and I think that other judges must take their cue from this justice who delivered that judgment. And I am happy, because when I went through the statement that that he read, he was like, the truth of the matter is that the Reverend failed his people, and that 3 times the people of Taraba State voted him, and so he was in breach of trust of the people, and that he was not like a reverend who did what he did. And he established that either the man was corrupt ab initio, or he got into office and he was induced and became corrupted. And so that fact was established. However, what I'm skeptical about is the fact that only the governor fell. More people should have also been charged alongside with him.
Now, when I was reading that matter carefully, or the case carefully, I discovered that while, of course, on the judgment that was delivered, now the judge carefully mentioned the fact that the money was disbursed to different people.
Yes.
Now, we are those people.
Exactly. And so I started by saying I am concerned about the corruption cases in Nigeria and the fight against corruption. And so the first thing you want to talk about is that, why are we having the amount of cases we have? Remember, not a fraction of the cases we have in courts, up to a fraction of it, or more than that, and have not gone to the courts. There are so many cases that have not even gone to courts. Now, why do we have a plethora of issues, corrupt cases like this? It's because we have failed to plug the loopholes. And where do we need to start from? We need to look at, first of all, our laws. We need to look at how contracts are advertised, contracts are awarded and executed. Now, those 3 things I mentioned, there are no proper legal framework for guiding them. Even where there is, they are not followed. So the problem is now the problem of M&E. There is not enough monitoring and evaluation of the processes that awards contracts, first of all for the bidding, then the award of contract, then the execution of it. Now let me start from the bidding or the advertisement. Contracts are supposed to, under our laws, contracts are supposed to be advertised, and people are supposed to come and compete for it. But what we have seen over time is that most cases, contracts are awarded, and then for the record of it, they go and advertise. Now, once they do the advertisement, the person who is going to emerge had already been pre-qualified, and that was established clearly even in the case of John Linyame, where the judge posited that the contract had been awarded to a company to the tune of 250 million naira, and 180 million naira of that money was disbursed to the account of the government.
Now, my question again is, now, if this man was found culpable of this offense, as the judgment delivered, stated, now, these people that he disbursed this money to, we have not heard anything about them. Do you understand me? Now the company is there. I think they were dragged as one of the defendants and all that. But what if the judgment has been delivered on this governor? are we expecting, or what should we expect? Or should it not be that all the people involved, are being are facing this trial at once, not just the governor?
Yes, and I started that. Well, I think I didn't complete on that statement. It's the fact that when you drag when you take people, drag them to court on corruption cases, they are joiners. They are people whom you join to the issue, to the case. Now, the Commissioner of Finance was not dragged into the matter. The companies that
Commissioner of Finance then that was 2007.
Yes.
Good. Okay.
He was not dragged into the matter. The companies that were awarded these contracts were not dragged in, and of course the governor wasn't alone. And I believe that some bankers also were part of it, and nobody was joined to the issue, which is why some people, within the quarters of the Taraba State, are asking that the governor goes on appeal. But it's not only the fact that they believe that he has, which is his legal right, to go on appeal, but they came out to say it's selective. Why? Yes, when you fight corruption like that, it's going to be termed selective, in the sense that other people were supposed to be included, but then they were excluded from the process because the governor alone did not carry out that act. People did what they needed to do to facilitate the whole process, but then it was only the governor that has been selected out. However, I don't question that, but I question the fact that others were not dragged into it. And so if you must allow the corruption fight to have to receive overwhelming support from the people, then you need to do all the needful. Make sure that everybody who is involved gets involved. And when you exclude certain people, either by omission or by commission, then you leave room for people to speculate. Now, the fight against corruption should not be left to speculations. Because when you leave people to speculate, then you begin to lose credibility in your fight against corruption. Now, if we now look at this government entirely, it needs be to fight corruption and stamp corruption out. Then you begin to wonder the amount of fight against corruption on the opposition, and then how they treat, and it's Senator Shehu Sani is famous for this saying, that you treat the opposition with insecticide, and then the people within the party, you treat them with deodorants. And that is how Nigerians are seeing this fight. Now, Nigerians want to deal with corruption, but I'm not sure that the way to deal with corruption is only taking them to the courts. Because one of the things I started by saying that our jurisprudence has a problem, in the sense that the smart silk lawyers, SCNs, and the rest of them can flaw our system because they know where the loopholes are.
Now,
most times.
Are you not saying that the government should embark on employing those smart silk lawyers? Now, when you look at most cases in EFCC, discover that by the time we get to the court, EFCC loses out. We still have the same lawyers working.
Yes.
Now, going back to that, the fight against corruption, bringing it to the court. Now, some persons have brought out a bill which have not really passed through the legislative processes to become a law, that we should have a separate court trying corruption cases. That our courts, that the judges' hands are always filled up with cases. So, if you bring corruption cases, probably that's the reason why it lasts this long. Now, what's your thought on that?
I disagree with the fact that we need special courts for corruption. However, I believe that we need to introduce some level of drastic measures to the fight against corruption, especially in the legal system. And why I disapprove of it is that if you're going to have special court for corrupt cases or corruption cases, then most likely you're going to have special cases on all other matters. Take, for instance, you are going to have a special court for kidnapping. You will have special case for terrorism. You're going to have special case for rape and slavery and all that. I think the courts we have can do the job. The problem is that even when you create special cases courts, the same judges you're going to, and it's going to be at the discretion of the NJS, I think the Judicial Council that would, or the Chief Justice of the Federation, that will draft the judges whom he thinks should be at that court. Now, the problem is that, are these judges not also in the system already? They are already in the system. So why do you have separate
case for them. What I think we should do is, if we must fight this case, then we should pass a law that every corruption case must be tried. First of all, the process that of investigation must be watertight, and you must conclude that process before you carry out any arrest. Now the question is, some people will run away. The good thing is that we have collaboration with what you call Interpol, International Police. So anywhere anybody is hiding in the world, you can get them to repatriated, or they can try them in courts or other places. Now the point is that I was saying that we need to discourage what encourages people to carry out corruption. And how do you do that? It's the fact that the processes, because people do not just go to the bank, they don't go to the central bank or any of the commercial banks to go and steal money from there. No, nobody does that. What happens is that the processes of awarding contracts, that's where most of our corruptions come from. And so if we must deal with that issue, we need to look at it forensically and say, how do we, now I talked about forensic in the sense that you must have technology deployed so that you can track the processes. Number one, how is the bid done? If people are going to bid for any contract and it's done electronically, yes, there is going to be some measure of human interference. However, then you must open that process up, which is what we already have in our laws. The Freedom of Information Bill is there. I'm going to talk about that later on. But you see, once you have that Freedom of Information Bill, it means that people can recall the processes that gave award to company A against company B, and if they find that there was an underhand in it, then they can call to question the process. However, but if you make that process, it means that you're reducing the chances of people starting the process of corruption, because it starts from that preliminary level. Then that is done. When you award a contract, the purpose for which the contracts are awarded, let's say 1 billion naira was awarded for procurement of arms, then you must have your M&E, the department, to make sure they sit on the process and make sure that they follow through to specifications and to details.
Are you alleging that our processes are faulty?
I'm not alleging. This is in public domain. We have had these cases before. Let me give you a quick scenario. When El-Rufai was Minister of FCT, most of the rules were tied because they're supposed to have about number of layers, and some of them didn't get to the final stage of the layers, and so he discovered that most of the rules we were shortchanged. And what did he do? He called the contractors in to come and lay the final ones. Now I can give you some example within some of the roads, ring roads within Abuja. The entire Abuja area 1 to Bega Road, there was a case like that. Then the recent one we saw was the road connecting Area 1 roundabout to Galadima roundabout in Apple axis, at Games Village axis. Now, that road was awarded to the former vice president's company, who didn't carry out that project. But then after this government took over, he started the process. And I can also tell you roads like that across the country. You had the ramp issue where many projects were awarded to people in government, and then they didn't do, they had to eat the money. Now, the problem is that the processes are not tracked. When you track the processes, then the contractors know that this process is already, people are watching it. And so by the time you're done, you now have your M&E, your engineers, to go and check whether they confirmed to specifications. If it didn't meet the specifications, then we can now also call them back to do the jobs or probe them. That's what they do. Now, most of the roads in Nigeria, if you notice that there are no signages, you don't have pedestrian lanes. Why? Because monies meant for those areas are taken and nobody questioned them. And so the fight against corruption is one, really, if we want to do it, we must deploy technology and forensic experts in tracking these things. And also, EFCC has units in all the banks, which arguably is supposed to track funds that come in and go out. But what happens is that they do not, sometimes they turn a blind eye. And I'll tell you why we also have a problem with fight against corruption. Is the fact that, and this is not an allegation, is the fact that I am also throwing the challenge to people in government and people who can go and carry out investigation to do this. What I have discovered in Nigeria with employment is that employments are no longer advertised. Employments are given by people in high places. So let me give you an example. EFCC is going to employ, let's say, 2,000 operatives. What you're likely going to see is that all the senators in Nigeria are going to bring at least one candidate, and there are over 300. There are 109 senators. You have 310 House of Reps member. You have ministers. You have aides. You have different people. You have ambassadors, and all these people influence employment into these sensitive positions we talk about.
Okay.
Now, when you have that happen, and I can tell you that I think that the people who are operatives within the EFCC got in there because some politicians found made ways for them to get in there.
Now,
and so it becomes difficult for them to fight against corruption. Let me give you the reason.
Okay.
Let me give you the reason. I think it was under the former, I think either the last EFCC chair or the one before him, who alleged that documents are leaked to people that they are investigating. So the question I ask you is that how do documents that are within secured environments and properly archived leak and get to the hands of the same person you're fighting? The case of Bori, was mentioned as one of such cases. Now the reason is because these people, these corrupt politicians, corruptly get people that are loyal to them employed into this system, thereby frustrating the efforts of our fight against corruption, and we must collectively fight against that. Now, if you look at employment generally across Nigeria, that's the same thing you have. People get into these services because a highly placed person recommended and gave a note to that. Even admission, that happens. And so you see that the processes that even gets people into what should naturally be a natural selective processes are flawed. And so when you have people changing with that trajectory, or affecting changes against natural causes, the effect of that is that you're going to have a flawed system that cannot fight the system back.
All right, that's that for looking at corruption. Of course, we're actually looking at the judgment that was delivered to the former Taraba State governor, and of course the fight against corruption. We'll go for a short break, and when we come back, we are looking at Dino Melaye's actions during plenary yesterday. Please stay with us.
Welcome to National Discourse.
Current affairs.
We must not extricate anybody from corruption. If any one of them is found wanting, the due course and the law must take its course.
Nation building.
Administration is slightly different from the last one in the fight against corruption.
We need to really task our leaders, who are the religious leaders, from the emir, from the bishops, from whoever they can.
Some of our village markets, there are people, they call them in Hausa Yan Nakama. They are like Agberu in the markets. Whatever anything is not useful to you is not important to you.
Politics.
What happened in Benue might be political. It still has another tone, not political, dated way back. If you follow history.
It's interactive.
Not part of Nigeria.
Okay.
And it will not be good for us.
When they gather their people, they tell them, these Hausa people are your enemies. When Hausas gather together, they tell them, these Igbo people are your enemies. When the Yoruba people gather together, they say the same thing.
Who are we? We are just from the background, and today we are here in TSTV, and that is why we must propagate our own.
National Discourse, weekdays on NCTV.
We see beyond the news. We are concerned about how it affects you, bringing updates on the economy, government and politics, sports and so much more. We are committed to informing, educating and entertaining you. We are NCTV, Nigeria Central Television. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and YouTube. NCTV, strictly Nigeria.
Welcome to National Discourse.
Current affairs.
We must not extricate anybody from corruption. If any one of them is found wanting, the due course and the law must take its course.
Nation building.
Administration is slightly different from the last one in the fight against corruption.
We need to really task our leaders, who are the religious leaders, from the emir, from the bishops, from whoever they can.
Some of our village markets, there are people, they call them in Hausa Yan Nakama. They are like Agberu in the markets. Whatever anything is not useful to you is not important to you.
Politics.
What happened in Benue might be political. It still has an undertone, not political, dated way back. If you follow history,
it's interactive.
Not part of Nigeria.
Okay.
And it will not be good for us.
When they gather their people, they tell them, these Hausa people are your enemies. When the Hausas gather together, they tell them, these Igbo people are your enemies. When the Yoruba people gather together, they say the same thing.
Who are we? We are just from the background. And today we are here in TSTV. And that is why we must propagate our own.
National Discourse, weekdays on NCTV.
You welcome back from that short break, and of course, after the return of the break, like we said, we're going to look at Senator Dino Melaye's action. Now, yesterday, during plenary, we saw Senator Dino, our own Senator Dino Melaye, of course, coming back, and we saw smiles on some people's faces because the action man is back. Now, most of the things or most of the actions he took yesterday, like I said, without saying defection proper, he have not really said it, but his body language, when he requested that, okay, first of all, appreciating the Senate and Nigerians and the co-guides, and of course the People's Democratic Party, especially APC was not mentioned in that little address or little valedictory speech, so to speak. Now, what does that tell us about Senator Dino Melaye's intentions?
A way to make a grand entry or comeback. I think one of the things that Senator Dino Melaye is known for is his drama. And again, he didn't disappoint yesterday. He came with that fanfare, really. That's what I think it is. He came in and then did what he did. You might think it's symbolic, but I think that was a clear statement.
Okay.
Now, what is the statement? Number one, if you look at his travail, he believes that his travail is orchestrated by elements in APC, especially, from his home state. And we have seen him openly accuse his governor of being behind his travail, and also with some level of collusion from the federal police. And so, yes, Dino Melaye came out yesterday to thank Nigerians, thank even the PDP that he thought. Remember, while he was away, he also said that he apologized publicly to the former president. That yes, during his reign, he even openly criticized the government then, but then he didn't, the kind of punishment that is meted to him right now was not meted to him then. And so he clearly yesterday was trying to tell Nigerians that the truth of the matter is that the party I so believed that was a change, if for anything, is not standing for democracy. And the rights of people are being trampled upon. And I think that that's what Dino Melaye rightly did yesterday. He may not have said it directly, but I think that what he has done, you can trace it back to the meeting they had, the new PDP members had last week, over the weekend, where in attendance you had the Speaker of the House of Representatives, you had the Senate of the President, and then a host of other people, including people who are not even in the old, the ex-new PDP members in APC. So you also see people in APC that are from different parties before the formation. Now, what that simply tells you is that these people, because there were over 22 registered political parties that came together, that collapsed into APC, and what they clearly are trying to do is to register their protest against what they tend to refer to as are not being carried along or marginalized by the APC. They talked about the fact that they are not given appointments. They talk about the fact that they are not being treated properly. And so, yes, you now see that the essence of the merger of APC in 2014 was basically for one purpose, to take over power. So my fear is this, that should the APC lose in 2019, we probably would not have APC standing as PDP is standing right now. Because the chief reason for them coming together was basically to grab power. And because they grabbed the power, some people fell out of that power equation. Remember, the wife of the president alleged that before, that people who fought for this administration have been shortchanged and shut out. And so you now have jackals and
and all kinds of animals now taking the pie of the cake. But the people who really fought for it didn't get. And so that's why you have the Kao Baraje's group, the movement, met the other time and gave an ultimatum of 1 week. Now they met with the president, I think on Monday evening. They were supposed to meet with the president. However, that meeting didn't take place. Now, coming from that meeting, one of the things that they agreed upon is that to set up an 8-man panel committee to basically look at the grievances. The party has agreed that yes, there are grievances and they need to look at it. And that 8-man panel is from the executive, is chaired by the vice president, that also has the SSG, Boss Mustafa, as a member, and then the vice chairman, Northeast, I think North, Lawa Shuaibu, also as a member. Now, on the part of the aggrieved APC, new PDP members in APC, they have not met to elect their 4 members yet. But I think what they are trying to do is to have a bargaining chip with APC. Going forward into 2019, what are the terms of condition for our agreement and our merger? But I don't see that happening, because what they're trying to do is to have this meeting before the deadline of their before their convention of this June. That meeting is supposed to be in June. Their convention, national convention. I foresee that meeting might not produce the kind of result that is expected. And if that fails to happen, then be sure that APC is going to begin to crumble from within, because the governors from PDP, former governors of PDP that moved into APC, also gave a bite to the party to win the election. And so if that happens, we're going to see a mass defection, and it's already been heralded by Senator Dino Melaye. Yes. So Dino Melaye clearly has set the tone, and other senators are bound to follow. Remember, Shehu Sani has also publicly come out to say that he's going to run against the governor of Kaduna State, and he's not going to get the ticket of APC to run against his governor. So obviously, what you're going to see is defection either to PDP or SDP.
Now, looking at next year's election, having that in view, and with the action of Senator Dino Melaye, what do you think that might cause for APC? Because if eventually defects, like I was trying to pick from your statement, if eventually defect to PDP, what does that leave us with? And then having looked at that, you look at what do you think he'll be coming out for next year? Because we all know that he has some political ambitions for next year, but looking at it critically, and if he happens to defect to PDP, what do you think we'll have on the long run, looking at coming from Senator Dino Melaye?
The electoral value of that we cannot quantify right now. However, I know for sure that Dino Melaye is a spoiler. He might not go for any elective position, but he might do the dirty job and be a spoiler for 2019. And if he does that, and the party is moving into, obviously, PDP, and they win back power in 2019, you're going to be sure that he probably will represent them at the executive level, maybe minister or something. That is going to happen. But remember that Dino Melaye is good at being a spoiler. He is a grassroots politician. He understands the politics of Nigeria. And so, yes, you cannot wish it away, because demonstrated by the recall process, you saw that the people, what you saw in Kogi that time was the fact that people say if it was a vote for, then they would have voted more for him, because the number of people who came out to vote to say yes, we want him recalled, was below 20%. And so if you're looking at that from that angle, then Dino Melaye would go a long way. Number one, he's going to make sure that the governor doesn't return. And I'm sure that the governor knows that he cannot return except by rigging, because the people of Kogi State are united against that. And then when you look at the national front, obviously, one of the things that he's not new to losing power. He lost the House of Reps to TJ Tajuddin. And what did we see him? He started anti-corruption network, and he was vociferous about it. He was at the forefront of it, making a lot of noise against the former government. That was what he did. And that also, whether you like it or not, was one of the reasons why PDP lost as well, because he was a PDP member at that time before he defected to APC. So you're going to see a spoiler, and there are going to be a lot of them. My concern is that in all of this, What I have seen, and one takeaway from all of this fight is that the development and the Nigerian people are not taken into consideration when you look at the equation, the political permutations and equations. The people are not their issue. What is their issue is who gets power, when, and how. And so, if that be the reason, then what should the people now have as social contract with these people? Because we have clearly seen it that the reason why the people, new PDP in APC is complaining is because of appointments. And if that be the case, then what is the lot of the ordinary Nigerians that they are supposed to represent? And that is what Nigerians should be concerned about, because obviously the essence of democracy is about participation. And if people are elected because of the inclusivity of it, but then they go there for their personal gains and what they can get out of it, then we need to look at the democracy we're practicing, which means that the processes that throw up people for election, we need to look at it, because all the political parties, number one, they are going to there is a technical way they knock good people out. Number one, finance. Number two, delegate system. Number three, access to the public funds. And so the people who might go there for the good of the ordinary people might not get in there because they lack all these parameters for getting into power. And so if that be the case, then we need to look at the system and begin to correct it. One of the ways to correct it is, number one, is you need to look at people who have genuine reasons to, or you know for sure that these guys are involved in certain community projects that can help their communities. Then they need to begin to mobilize and say, we know PDP will not give you ticket, we know APC will not give you ticket, we know SDP might not give you ticket, but there are more small political parties that might give you. So it needs a revolution of the people by saying, we want you, Barrister Uche, get into ABGA, my brother, get into ADP, get into a smaller party, ARNP, get into these parties, we will vote for you. And then the process also, because money is involved in campaigns, and the people must have to provide money funded by themselves. And a clear case is what happened in Kaduna State some weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, when the local government elections were held. Now, one of the local governments that PDP won was the fact that the candidate was mobilized by the people, and the people have given him a clear-cut charge that we got you there, and you must make sure that you represent us, otherwise we will come for you. And so that is how democracy, because if you look at the evolution of politics, it started by, you had autocracy, you had all kinds of forms of politics, monarchy and the rest, till the people say, no, we wanted inclusiveness. And that inclusiveness simply means that all of us cannot get into the power, but we can elect you. And so now is the time for Nigerians to say, we want to elect one of our own to be there. And that's what we need to look at now.
Looking at what the moves of Senator Dino Melaya, of course, the welcome that was given to him during plenary by PDP members, especially when he asked to sit beside Senator David Mark. Now, looking at that and looking at the new coalition that our former president Olusegun Obasanjo is planning on, and then if PDP, is it possible that PDP get coerced into going into
PDP
coalition?
Cannot be coerced into that. Now, if you look at all the parties that are right now, the biggest of them in terms of opposition is still PDP. Yes, SDP is trying to give them a run for their position in opposition, but SDP is no match for PDP. That is the fact, and that's the truth. Now, SDP has not done enough groundwork for people to say, we know this party. SDP is not a new party per se, but it's quite new on our political turf in this dispensation. And so if they are new in our political turf, it simply means that they have more work to do. However, what I think and I see would happen is that maybe a coming together of more political parties, which might also include SDP and PDP, and the one that Chief Olusegun Obasanjo has already adopted, the African Development Party, ADP. Now, if that be the case, what we most likely would see, and I know for sure that there are talks going on right now. You know, we're talking about defection, and one of the things we know that is happening right now is that the governor of Sokoto State is being tipped to move from PDP, APC to PDP. And this is very instructive. He is in APC, but he was at the meeting of these aggrieved party members of APC. And so we are seeing that PDP is trying to woo him to come and run against the president, because what that means is, as from their calculation, if he comes in, he's coming from Sokoto State, the Caliphate. And so he's marginally going to divide the vote from the north, because that's basically where the battle is going to be. Because the battle for this 2019 is not against a man from the north and a man from the south. It's not against two northerners. And so what they're looking at is that if we can divide the votes from the north, then we can be rest assured that we're going to take power by 2019. Because the southeast, southwest, south would go with PDP, obviously. Then the southwest is where the battleground will also be. North Central obviously is going to collapse into PDP again, because they have seen that in these 3 years of this administration, they have not fared better in APC.
All right, because of our time, we will be holding it on there to take care of other things. Thank you very much, sir, for coming.
Thank you for
And for our viewers who were unable to pick your calls today, we'll do that tomorrow. We'll have interesting package for you tomorrow. So please stay with us. From me, to sign out, Uche Uduma.